of momentum to get things done very quickly. So I'm very, very pleased to introduce to everyone Michael Russo, who will be going through the paperless process with us.
Oh, I need to ask if you can hear me because I have this lapel microphone. Is it coming through the speakers?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, well, thanks for coming, everybody. As you're all well aware, we're trying to shift now from having applicants send in paper materials to try to expedite the admissions process and make it easier for them and for you by having them upload documents. And when we first started discussing how we would do this, we knew that there was a way currently to upload documents, but we essentially gave you 5 slots on an application, and you had to put in directions for the applicant regarding what you expected, and they were all sort of thrown into the same pile, and then you had to go through what was uploaded to see if you in fact had everything you needed for the applicant. So when we started this redesign, we thought it would be a really great idea if we could attach documents, sort of associate documents with checklist items, which are requirements in a lot of cases for supplemental materials. So that's what we did. And I'm sure most of you have seen the changes. I know a lot of the departments have gone in and updated their applications, and others have not, probably because you may not have required documents prior to these enhancements. And maybe that's why you're here now. You want to see how exactly you go about doing that and what the features are and how it might benefit you. So I'm going to go through that first, and I know he handed out this guide, and I'm going to follow this pretty faithfully. But if there are questions or diversions along the way, it's okay. Feel free to raise your hand, and I'll stop and address your questions as we go through it. But we'll start with the paperless process and how it relates to the checklist items. And the first thing we'll do is we'll take a look at. First of all, can I see a show of hands of people who were using the checklist prior to this? Okay, good. And I know that there are a lot of departments that weren't using it, and for good reason, because it wasn't really helpful. But now we hope it will be. So I'm going to start with the local checklist items screen. And I think the first point of clarification are there are checklist items that you can create, you can define, you can label, and there are those that are created at a higher level for admit. And the reason they're there at a higher level in some cases is just to make it easier for you. Things like letters of recommendation or application fee, that's only going to appear in one place. Everybody's going to be using those things. Well, not everybody, but most people will be. If you accept letters of recommendation, you're going to want to turn those checklist items on. And the same thing with that application fee. There are also some international admissions requirements that everybody's going to have to keep track of. So those are things that, again, we have at the top level. We haven't mandated anything, application fee, letters of recommendation. Those things are sort of, we want those to appear in one place, but you have the flexibility at your level to create items that make sense for you. Things like personal essay or CV. Again, these are things that might be at the top level, but you could create them yourself locally as well. So here we have a list, and this is not real data. This is just on my machine. So if you see an applicant name, it's not a real name. So we have a list of checklist items for this program, and you can see over here in this these last 2 columns. One says local, and the other one, it says local. And if it says no, that means it's sort of global. Everybody can go and pick that. And I think you've seen where you choose your checklist items, where you go here and you can select from the official list the ones you want to use. And I'm going to just pick an extra one there and save it. And then I'm going to go back to under set of the local checklist items. And we can see that the item I just selected is here now. So if we go into any of the global ones, sort of these system-wide ones that say no here, we can't change anything, but at least we can see, how they're configured, and we can look at, these little help bubbles to the right of any of these items will give you a clue as to what the purpose of the field might be. Okay, so right now I'm going to focus on local items because that's most likely what you're going to be doing. So the first step would be that you go and select them and you're happy with the list, and then the second step might be to go and create your own. Now I already have a personal essay here, so I'm going to go in, and you can see that you can configure all of this. And I can go through these options, but most of them are pretty self-explanatory. So here I have a personal essay, and if you require a personal essay of both your domestic and your international, you'd want to check those 2 boxes. And then this checklist item type is sort of a new characteristic of a checklist item. This is where you can determine how what the significance of that checklist item might be. So here I have, this is an unofficial document. It's supplemental material. It's something, if you, again, mouse over the help, it tells you. If you choose that, that's going to be something that you expect the applicant's going to upload. It's an unofficial document. It's something that you would like to see either with the application or after the applicant's been accepted, and I'll get to that option down below. And then the second type of checklist item is an official document. It's something that you do require, you want to keep track of in your checklist, but you're not going to be receiving that from the applicant. It's going to be sent in from a testing agency or perhaps a school they attended. It might be an official transcript. But indicating that here, what that does is it tells the system that it shouldn't be prompting the applicant for that document because they can't supply it. It's coming from an official source. And then you have the third item, which is office use only. This might be something for office use only. You know, we wanted to create a category where you could just create a checklist item that made sense for your program, but it isn't something that could be uploaded. It may be. I've seen some programs use things like they want an indication as to whether or not the student is going to be applying for financial aid, and they put that right in their checklist. But it's not something that could be uploaded. It's just something that departmental staff might go in and check off in the list. So if it's that kind of item, you'd want to choose this third box. Again, it's not a document. There's nothing physical associated with it. It's just a piece of information that you'd want to keep track of about the applicant. And then we go down to this required when. Well, if it's, now we actually haven't started enforcing this, but the rules are in place. If it's something that's required prior to formal review, and I'm going to leave this as an unofficial, it's going to appear in the application. So if it's something you require, there's going to be a prompt on the application for them to upload it, and they will not be able to submit for formal review unless they've attached that document. Now, they could go and choose a picture of their brother or sister and upload that. And there's no way for the system to really know until somebody goes in and looks, or most likely they might have selected the wrong document. And if that happens, there are steps you can take to have them resubmit. But the required one is important because let's say there's something that you don't require until after an applicant submitted for formal review. It may be something that you just don't care to see yet. If you choose that you only want to see it after they've been accepted, what will happen is after the applicant's been accepted, we can send them an automated email that says, in the email that tells them they've been accepted, we can put text in there that says, here's your next step. You need to log into your applicant portal, and when they do, there's going to be a documents tab that I'll show you in a minute, and they're going to see prompts for everything that they need to supply. Because they've been accepted. So we've really thought through really a lot of these automation steps to avoid the manual processing. I'm saying, oh, geez, okay, they're at this stage in the application lifecycle. What do they need? What do they need to do, or what do I need from them? All the guesswork will be taken out if you take advantage of some of these features in the checklist. You'll know what's still missing and what they still need to do, and they will as well. Okay. And then this last option, we put this in after the changes went into effect, because what we noted was, and I think it was Joe Syracuse who made the comment to me, and it was a good idea. The way this works is if you create a local checklist item and somebody and there's an applicant that has information associated with the checklist item, meaning at one point somebody went in and marked it yes, you can't delete it. because you don't want to lose all that information. So I put this option in to hide it. If there's a checklist item you used 3 years ago, but you don't really want it involved with all these updates, it doesn't make sense anymore for your program, for example, you can just click this box and it won't appear to the applicant, it won't appear on the checklist tab, it won't really appear anywhere but in this list where you're managing your checklist items. So that's the purpose of that field. This document supplemental materials options, this is really, this was put in to give you a place where you could put in a prompt that's different than the description up here. The description up at the top of this page might be good for internal use. It might make sense for your office, but you might want to say it in a different way to the applicant. And if you choose not to do that, it'll just use the item title on the prompt for uploading documents on the application. But this allows you to customize that, so it's more, it could be more sort of user-friendly for the applicant. And of course, you can write in specific instructions for that item. And prior to this, when we only had the 5 slots of sort of nondescript documents, you had to put all of your instructions in one place for everything you expect to be uploaded. And this allows you to just focus on one item at a time and put in specific instructions. For example, if it's a personal essay, you might say, make sure you include something about this or that, like I have here. Oh, and then, of course, the third option is the maximum number of documents. And they may not seem to make a lot of sense, but if you think about something like unofficial transcripts and a student who went to 4 or 5 different schools, they may have those documents in 3 different image files or PDF files. And if we didn't allow you to sort of upload multiple files per sort of checklist item, then we're putting the onus on the applicant to figure out a way to concatenate all of those files into one file and then upload it. So we thought it would just be easier if we gave the applicant the option to upload more than 1 document per item, per upload item. So and I'll show you this in a minute. We're going to leave personal essay at 3, even though it doesn't make a ton of sense because it's probably likely to be 1 document. But this is a little bit of flexibility that we're adding to make it easier for the students. And by the way, since these have gone into effect, there have been hundreds and hundreds of documents uploaded, no problems at all. The students do a really good job. We were a little bit worried as to how this would go over, but the students, they're really on the ball, and the scans all look great. A lot of them have done this concatenation themselves, which surprised me. So yeah, they really know what they're doing, and everything's gone well. And of course, every document that's uploaded, and I'll just mention this now in case you're wondering, every document that's uploaded is being converted behind the scenes to PDF. And we're doing that to keep, for security reasons, first of all, with Word documents, it's possible to embed scripts and things like that, but also to keep the file format consistent. When you scan a document, you can typically save it in a variety of image formats or PDF. And a lot of students do upload image format. But what we looked down the road and said, well, we eventually want to be able to put these documents together. And these are some changes coming within the next few months. And in order to be able to do that, we had to have a consistent file format. So we chose PDF for its security, portability. So you might wonder, if you upload something internally, it automatically changes to a PDF. It doesn't happen immediately. There's another process that runs, but it will eventually, probably within 5 minutes, become a PDF. Okay, and then down a bit lower, we have communication settings. Now this may be something you want to turn on or not, but if you want the applicant to be able to view the status of their checklist, of this particular checklist item when they log into their portal, you can check the box. That might make more sense for official documents than it does for something they know they already uploaded, they know the status of it. But it gives you the option here either way. And then you can also opt to be notified. For example, if somebody uploaded, let's say you have a checklist item that you're having a bit of problem with and you have to delete them or re-request them, it's not a bad idea to have a notification sent to you when the applicant has uploaded the document again. But this option might make more sense if it's something that you expect after the applicant's been accepted, as opposed to prior to submitting for formal review. It's just a handy feature in case the notification makes sense.
Mike,
Yes?
can more than one email address be put in there?
Not right now, but I have a list of enhancements that I need to do, and that is one of them. Now you threw me all off.
That's
No, I'm just kidding. You didn't. Okay, and then down at the bottom, we have what we call automation options. You probably are aware of the fact that if somebody pays through ePay, the application fee checklist item is automatically marked as paid, and there's a note in there as to when it was received. We do the same thing with letters of recommendation when they're received. But for things like official GRE and TOEFL, we were doing sort of automated marking of checklist items, but the catch was you had to pick the sort of the shared GRE or TOEFL item, which there's one version of that for the entire campus. And somebody asked the question, I think it was last week, what if I accept GMAT or GRE and I want one checklist item for both? Well, there was really no way for us to do that if we only had one sort of link to the GRE. So what we did was we have this option now where you can specify a checklist item, and then here at the bottom you can say if a GRE score is received, then automatically mark it, and that will allow somebody who accepts GMAT or GRE or IELTS and TOEFL, or IELTS and or TOEFL to have one checklist item for both, as opposed to individual ones. Because if you had, let's say, IELTS and TOEFL was received, well, that sort of fulfills the obligation for IELTS, but it's still marked as sort of unreceived in your list. So these options at the bottom will allow you to sort of add a separate property to any checklist item, and when those scores are received electronically, and we are receiving IELTS electronically now as of this week, or TOEFL or GRE, and soon next week we'll have GMAT as well. And I know that only matters to 2 people in this room probably, but we're going to be receiving the GMAT scores electronically as well, so there'll be another option here for that. And as we think of more, we can sort of use the same approach for things that happen in the system that can automatically mark checklist items. Do we have any questions about setting the screen up, any of the options on the screen before I move on? Yes?
With the local checklist items, is there a way that we can print up like a batch to show who's got what in? Like say I wanted to know how many applications were incomplete and what they needed, which I usually do for our committee so that they can contact them. Is there any way that I can print up, say, a database that would have that information on it?
Yeah, there is the checklist export. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that will have the status of every checklist item.
Just for that one individual student, though, is there any way that I can do
No.
it for?
Oh, I see. Well, if you go, you could focus on a given term in the checklist export, and choose your fields, and then I think when you go to, yeah, I mean you could focus on a whole cohort, you know, based on the semester, and then some of the other filters like their application status, and just and only export checklist data for that group. Would that be helpful, or would you expect some?
It might. I'll have to play around with it.
Yeah, but I think that, you know, I think that's a great suggestion. Though there should be some quick and easy way to just see where everybody is. And you know, prior to this, there was really not the necessity for that, because the checklist was sort of dumb. It was there, and a lot of people weren't using it. But now, I think that we need to focus on some of the enhancements that are going to support you know, the current set. And that's a good point. If we're gonna centralize the use of the checklist and make it a lot more intelligent and important than it was, we probably need to add some of these supporting enhancements as well. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Did somebody make a note about that? Okay.
In the bottom, you mentioned that IELTS can be submitted electronically, and you were talking about the GRE or GMAT. In the application manager under management, do you have to click those in order to see it on an application list?
Oh,
Or do you know what I'm talking about?
you mean to see the columns
Yeah,
appear?
do you have to set those up, or now we can put in a column along with the application list that now designates IELTS and GMAT?
Yeah, when GMAT is added, you can do that, and I actually have my IELTS in the list now. It's an option. If you logged in when you get back to your desk, you'll see that you can go into settings and choose IELTS now.
And GMAT will be updated in a few weeks.
Yeah, right now I'm at the point where I'm just, I have like about 10,000 GMAT records. I just need to figure out how to display it, because there are a lot more fields than IELTS and TOEFL. So it's more a matter of just making sure my labels are correct.
Right. You don't have to populate those bottom check marks because they're two different things, right?
That's right, yeah. But if you wanted to create your own custom checklist item that was automatically marked yes when an IELTS score was received, or TOEFL or GRE, and eventually next week GMAT, you could do that. Yes?
I'm wondering about how we're going to have bank statements be official documents, because usually the students submit those.
Right,
So-
the students submit them. I would say that this gets into sort of the requirements for international admissions, I believe. It's sort of an unofficial document. I mean, even if a student makes a copy and sends it in, it's not, it's something, I don't know, Stephen Shaw's here. Do you want to speak to this? No, okay, he doesn't want to speak to it.
Well, they have to send in the official one.
International is basically going to work the same way as domestic for all of this. Every student will be admitted with provisional admission. So in the past, we took unofficial bank statements anyway. Maybe some of them didn't know that, but we did, and we would just make sure that that student knew that they had provisional admission, and then when they arrived here, they had to bring with them their original document. This process essentially makes every student provisional, because they're going to be uploading their transcripts, their bank statements, their financial form, test scores if they didn't come in electronically, passport pages, I-20s from other schools, all of that they're going to upload, just like a domestic student is going to upload everything. But we will no longer be determining provisional versus final admission at the point when we verify your admission in graphic. Instead, every student will be provisional, and we'll send them, kind of just like we do now, a checklist that says you were admitted provisionally. Here are the items that you need to bring officially when you arrive on campus and present them in person to us. So all of the international stuff now is going to be this. We're going to be looking at everything online. The condition or the status of that document that's now scanned should be exactly what you were expecting had it come in as an original document. So it doesn't mean that just because you're looking at it online now that you can take anything. It's just that your scanned copy is okay for provisional decision. Does that help? And we're working it out.
Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate it. Okay.
Mike?
Yes?
Going back to the checklist item,
Okay.
for the letters of recommendation, can we then, just by using that little drop-down at how many documents can be uploaded, would that allow a recommender to upload more than one document?
No, not at this time, only because letters of recommendation they're received from a different place, from the recommenders portal. And the question was, if everyone didn't hear it, was would recommenders be able to upload more than one document? And at this time, no, and that's because the interface on the application that allows for document uploading is different from the recommenders portal. But with that said, one of the major enhancements that I'm going to be working on, I think probably in February, is to rewrite the letter recommendation portal. That was actually, most of that was done when I didn't have a lot to do with GradMet a few years back. And it doesn't really, I mean, it works with the current system, but it's not sort of written in the same way as our new approach. So I need to rewrite that, and there are a lot of enhancements that we're going to be adding to the recommenders portal. But that's going to be one of them, to allow for multiple documents. Right now, it's just not clean enough to do that. Okay.
Okay, well, that opens up lots of questions that probably have to talk.
About the recommenders portal, we'll probably be back in this room in 3 months talking about the new letters of recommendation enhancements. But we have quite a few in mind for that. Okay, is there anything else before I move on to check? Yes?
Can I just ask, what's in the recommenders portal right now? Does it direct them to
proposal letter, or is it?
Yeah, actually, I'll show you, when we get down to that, I'll actually log in as a recommender and you can see what they say,
Okay.
okay? Somebody else, oh, here.
I have one more question for so everything's gonna be electronic, but will we still print everything out and bring it over to international admissions, or we look at it electronically ourselves?
You can see how it works exactly,
Yeah.
yes, it's going to be electronic.
Yeah,
So
and
we'll be doing the same thing that you're doing. So I'm not sure exactly how it's working, but when you get to the step of submit to international admissions, just like you do now, and then you print all of that stuff, you won't be doing that. You'll just be hitting the save submit, and there's some other steps in there, and that will come to us electronically, and then we'll be doing the same thing. So
Right.
this should save a ton of paper,
Yes.
and it should save some processing steps for everybody.
right, and just in case everyone wasn't following that, the question was, would all of these materials still need to be printed out and sent to international admissions as they had been? And one of the reasons we did this was so that you would never have to do that again. What we're going to do now is when you choose to submit to international admissions, we're going to make sure that all of the documents that you would normally have printed out and sent over are in the system electronically. And if they are, Stephen's group is just going to have electronic copies of those, so you won't be printing out and sending over, and then Stephen's group having to make copies again and send to all of the different groups that require those the documents. So it's going to be really seamless, and we'll be able to verify that everything is in place, given the rules for the applicant. I know every applicant is different, and there are documents that may or may not be required, but the system will know all that. It'll know what's required, and if everything that's required isn't in place, then you won't be able to submit to international admissions, and it'll tell you why. But those changes are coming within the next, I think by November 15th, all of that will be in place. Okay, any other questions? Yes?
I'm sorry, one more follow-up question. Is there anything we need to do in the system to make sure that international admissions sees the documents as well as us? The
No.
department?
No, we're going to take care of all of that. We're going to make sure that, because we're going to have sort of university-wide rules for what is required for international applicants. And even if you don't pick something to be on your checklist, if it's required, it's going to be there.
All right.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Okay, so I showed you the local checklist, and essentially these are local and a combination of your local and sort of the shared items that have been selected for this degree program. And what I haven't shown you is how it looks on the application. Most of you have seen this, but when you're setting this up, you might be wondering, well, how is this going to look for a domestic applicant? I have, it tells you here that some of these are official documents, so those won't obviously appear on the application for upload. And office use only is not a document, it's just something internal. But then you have all these unofficial documents down here, unofficial transcripts, GRE scores, TOEFL. And those are things that an applicant can upload. So I'm going to just look at the application preview. And so if I were setting this up, this is probably the first place I'd look after I was happy with the items in the checklist. I would just go to the bottom of my application, and you can see here you have some instructions for the applicant that you don't need to bother writing anymore. We actually write these at the top level, and these are guides. And as I said earlier, applicants are reading this and following all the directions. Most of them are uploading in PDF format. I think we may have changed it a bit since this is a different database than the one that's actually in production, but this is the information that appears at the top of the section where documents can be uploaded. Now, one thing I will point out here is that underneath the technical instructions for the applicant regarding the type of file they should be uploading, we have directions down here that say if you really can't get that document in electronic format, you can mail it in. And we have the address of GEMS put in here. But if you would prefer to have the documents sent to you, now these are unofficial documents, and if they're sent to you and you want to sort of keep with this idea that all the documents will be attached to an applicant's record inside of GradMet, then somebody in your office would have to scan it and then upload it just like the student would. And I know prior to this, there was no way for you to upload a document for an applicant, just as there wasn't a way for an applicant to upload a document after they submitted for formal review. Well, that's all changed now. You can add documents, you can remove them as you see fit, and the applicant can also upload documents after they've submitted formal review if it's something that's required prior to, after acceptance, or something that you've rejected. They can log in their portal and add a document after the fact as long as you authorize that. So there's a place where you would put in your own mailing address if you didn't want it sent to GEMS, and I'll get to that when we look at the status form updates. But here we are, we're looking at the application, and you notice here that there are no directions underneath this item, so I mean, I'm going to jump back here and just add those. And I think that was, so I'm just going to put some instructions in here. And then I'm going to go back to the application now. I'm just going to reload that. And then jump to the bottom. And then we'll see that. Okay, so here are the instructions I just put in for this fake GRE. And as far as uploading goes, I'm going to find the one this one. Okay, so I'm going to do unofficial transcripts. So I'm going to go and choose a file. Oh, actually, no, I shouldn't do that here. I'll do that later as an applicant. I'll show you how that goes. But anyway, so the steps would be, in just following along with this. After you've selected your checklist items and you're happy with it, the only way for you to know for sure what the applicant's going to see is to look at the preview. Or you could also go and load a real application, but preview is the handiest. And one of the things I'd suggest is, because I know this question came up, sometimes you'll have checklist items in your list, but they're only for international applicants and not for domestic. And we had some calls with people saying, well, I have this checklist item, but it's not appearing in my preview. And the reason is because by default, the preview is the domestic application. So if you want to see the international, there's a link right at the top where you can just click and it'll load international. And I think I only have one item that was supposed to appear for international and not for domestic. And that would be TOEFL scores, and it's there now. Okay. Any questions about that, the preview or selecting checklist items? Yes?
Actually, for the GRE scores, they can upload their test copies. Because I called Lisa and she said we have to verify each one if they did that.
Right. I mean, we look at that as an unofficial document. I mean, this would be something that they would upload, and I'm not even sure. Let me just close that and go back here.
I'd rather them send me the original and I'll upload it if I'm going to have to call 100 people or, ETS 100 times to verify the GRE and the...
Well, here's the thing. The GRE scores are received electronically, so we do get those right within the system. The applicant shouldn't have to send in something, or we shouldn't have to wait for paper from the testing source, because we get that electronically, and you can see that they're received electronically in the system. And when GRE scores are received, official GRE scores, there's a link right in your applicant list to view those.
Mm-hmm. But I have a problem because Buff State, I can't tell you how many students have their scores forwarded to Buff State because it's the university or college at Buffalo, and we're the university at Buffalo.
Okay.
So that's why.
So how is that? If that situation occurs, how do you rectify it? You ask.
I have to call or email them and say you need to request a GRE score sheet to be sent to university at Buffalo, not college at Buffalo.
Okay, and now when they do that, we should
Then we get it.
on the next load we should get those electronically then, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes?
There is
Wait.
no way to,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
there is no way to verify GRE scores over the phone. They want to charge it. The only thing you can verify with the phone is TOEFL.
Well, you could verify those right within the system by
They
looking.
have them, but I'm just.
If the applicant hasn't had the scores on here, there really isn't a lot we can do. So yeah, I'm not sure how we best solve that problem.
Let me ask a question. What if we were to remove unofficial GRE scores from being something that students could put optionally up and just leave it as official? I mean, there's a double-edged sword with that, but if we have to make a decision on that, How many, I mean, or what you could do is we could remove it from the institutional level, and then on your local checklist item, for the departments that want to have it, you can have it. Is that?
That makes sense, Chris, because sometimes our students, when they apply, they've taken the GRE maybe 2 or 3 years before, and so they wouldn't have the official to send us, so it would be good.
GRE, I'm comfortable with doing that. TOEFL, I am not comfortable with doing that, and I'll tell you why. There are a lot of times, and you know this painfully, you know, we get 500, 600 TOEFL deferral waiver requests that we get through over the years, but most of the time, the applicant says, oh, I took the TOEFL, and then you have no idea what they're talking about. They never tell you that they took the TOEFL, and then they supply something to us after we pull their teeth out. And then you see something, and then we take a look at it, and we're able to use it. If you have old TOEFL scores earlier on, that can really help with the TOEFL waiver deferral process, not only for you, but for me. So if everybody's comfortable, then you will need, and I will clearly follow up with an email on this, you will need, for the unofficial GRE scores, to set that up in your local checklist items if you want that to be an option, okay? You don't have to have unofficial GRE scores even be an uploadable option, but if you want them, unofficial GRE scores, they will have to be put up in your local checklist items. They will be removed from the institutional level, but official GRE scores that come in will be linked directly to the GradMed application. One other thing I want to add to that, you may have noticed that there are more GRE scores that are showing up in GradMed now. Mike has changed some of the matching on that. It's much easier now. Before, there were things that were coming in, there was linking issues. That's been taken care of. Something else that he's working on right now, which is related to this, which is ePay. We have put in a request to have Mike build a table that will call out to the ePay transaction data, where you'll be able to get that pretty much real time. So if somebody pays an application fee in ePay, it'll show up in the GradMed application close to real time, not 24, 48, 72, linking, and all that other business. Okay.
Doesn't the university require GREs for PhD students?
The university requires GREs for PhD students, but for your checklist item, you can have, if you want to have that be the option of for you to be able to have that unofficially, you can do that on your local checklist items. For official GRE scores, it would automatically dump in and add to that checklist as well because they will have taken the test.
Okay.
Okay?
Make sure they send it.
Yeah.
Is the instruction to the student the same regarding the institution number and the department code?
You could put down on your checklist item 2925. I mean, 2925 is all over the place, but they don't pay attention to that sometimes, unfortunately. But you could put your department code down on the local checklist item to remind people if you wanted to have an unofficial GRE score in the local checklist item, you could tell them, you know, you could supply this now, but you must supply your official GRE scores. Here's the departmental code and here's the institution code.
Unofficial, will we be able to admit PhD students with unofficial provisionally?
You should have verified those scores or at least know that they have them officially received to the university by the time you admit them. I would be very careful with that.
Okay, so the answer is no, but we should.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
We see if the student has taken GRE more than once.
You will be able to see if the student has taken the GRE more than once. As a matter of fact, as many times as they've taken it, it shows up in the window. Same thing with TOEFL as well. Okay? Yes?
Are these checklist items tied to the application status so that if all of the items are received, it would automatically update the application status to complete, or is that not?
No, actually, the complete indicator tells you that the applicant has submitted for formal review. But we are going to have another indicator for all of the requirements, checklist requirements. It's not showing up there now because we're still working out some of the rules, especially with what's required for international. But once that's done, which should be next week, there's going to be another column, you could say checklist complete. Because a checklist that's complete when an applicant has submitted formal review may not be the same checklist that needs to be complete after they've been accepted. So, in other words, if something's not required until after an applicant's been accepted, the checklist item at one point could have been complete, but maybe there are 2 or 3 new items that are needed now because there was a change made. So once that logic is worked out, there will be an indicator where you can just say, okay, show me everybody who's fulfilled all their requirements, so that they can be accepted. And right now, I mean, there are still rules where you can't accept somebody until certain things occur. They pay their application fee, they've taken a standardized test, in some cases their GPA is over a certain number. No, that's not a checklist item, but that's just an example of sort of a rule in place, you know, prior to being able to accept an applicant.
Well, yeah, part of the reason I'm asking is because of like the issue, if we just make a local checklist item for unofficial GREs, or like in my department, we put a CV, but it's not required, it's an optional thing they can upload.
Right.
So if there's gonna be logic that says this is complete, what is that based on? Is it that everything on your checklist has to be completed? Or do you say there are certain things that don't, are we gonna have an ability to control that, to say, well, you don't have to have the CV, you can still be complete?
That's a good point. And there are going to be some things that are more important than others. Some things are required sort of at the university level, but locally, there is an option that's not on that screen now because I didn't want to overwhelm you with all the different wrinkles for a checklist item, but there is one that says that it's a local item and it's required or it's optional, and it's not showing up right now. Right now, everything is sort of in there as required, but in the case, it's like a soft requirement because it's not going to prevent anything from happening if it's not there, but it does affect our ability to track applicants who have everything completed. So I'll make a note of that, and I can actually add that to the screen where you can say, if it's a local item and it's something that would be sort of nice to have, but you don't want the applicant to show up as incomplete because that item's not there, it'll sort of ignore those. I don't know, can somebody make a note of that, and I can add that next week. But the reason it's not there now is because, again, we're still finalizing the logic that we use to determine when somebody is absolutely complete based on the kind of applicant they are, where they are in the application life cycle.
Mike, on the checklist, can you now delete an item from the checklist that was formerly there?
You can hide it. And that's essentially deleting it, but it keeps it in the list, but it doesn't appear anywhere else in the application. So if I go down to personal essay, and I choose to hide this, it just, because, you know, from a data integrity perspective, you don't really want to delete something that has historical significance. You know, if you've had an item in there and an applicant's been marked with that item, you don't necessarily want to delete the item and remove the record. But this allows you to hide it, so it won't appear anywhere but in this list, in the list of your management list. It doesn't appear in the application, it doesn't appear on the checklist tab. Nobody will ever see it.
So if you generated one, made a mistake, and then you needed to generate another one, you would hide it first instead of deleting it.
Well, if you just created one and then 5 minutes later want to get rid of it, you should be able to delete it, because chances are nobody's gone in and marked the student as having that item, or marking it NA. Okay, and if that's not the case, let me know.
And can you order them now, or that's a function that's in the future?
Yeah, it's a little bit, I mean, we're still working that out. You can set an order, but as we learned last week, we started to reorder them at the top level and it messed up everybody's order. So I think what we're going to do is just keep the items at the top level, maybe towards the top, and then have the default order for local items maybe start below that, or one or the other, or we'll pick numbers in the middle and sort of block those out so that you can put items above or below, but just not in between. And what we're seeing is, you know, we've had like letter recommendation 1, letter recommendation 2, and then CV, and then letter recommendation 3. So we're coming up with ways to mix the global items with sort of these university items with the local, and give you a sort of easy way to place them the way you want them, not only on the tab, but on the bottom of the application, where a student might upload documents. So, and somebody else had a question? Yes?
So when something's marked as an official document and that it's required before submitted for formal review, you had said official documents aren't going to prompt them to upload because we know that's a source from somewhere else.
Right.
So if we're still waiting to receive that, that means the student cannot mark it that they're done and complete. Is that correct?
No, because it's not something that we would expect from the applicant. But yeah, I see that, you know, here we have sort of the logic is a bit convoluted, but if you mark something as, I would think of it this way. If you mark it as an unofficial document, it's something that can be uploaded by the applicant. If you mark it as an official document, it's something that is typically sent in from a source other than the applicant, but it's still a document, which means it can be attached electronically to the application, but the student can't do it. You can do it internally in your office if you know, you get official test results or official transcripts, or you know, we might do that at GEMS, but it can still be attached. It's a document, but we just don't expect that from the applicant. And I guess, you know, unofficial is our nice way of saying it's something that was supplied by the applicant and needs to be verified. And official is something that comes from a source other than the applicant that we trust, and it can still be attached to the application. There's still going to be an upload prompt for you and the application manager, but just not for the applicant.
So then, the only things that will stop a student from being able to submit it for formal review is the unofficial document section that are required before, right?
That's right.
So once they have uploaded all of our required unofficial documents, they can mark it as complete still?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And if they, now we turn these features on sort of in the middle of this cycle, so there were people who submitted their applications before these changes were there. And for those people, we have some options as to how they can sort of reattach the documents if they were uncategorized or if they just didn't upload them at all. Going forward, there is a place in the student portal where they can do that, and I'll show you that in a minute. Yeah, I think we'll take a look at what the applicant sees. Now, you know what they see at the bottom of the application. And I'm just going to, sorry, the screen is tiny. I just need to find the right browser. This one, okay. I apologize for the screen resolution, but I'll make this as big as I can. And I'm just going to log in as an applicant now. Let's say this applicant, their application is still it's still active. It hasn't been submitted for formal review. Okay. So again, it's a little bit crowded here, but my application is still active, so I'm just going to load that. And so you can see for this person, they've already attached some documents. And again, you might see like TOEFL scores here, but this is just a test database with the different options turned on. If it was an official document, it wouldn't appear here. But here's a case of somebody who uploaded 2 different documents for one of these. Now, you're well aware of how this works on the application, you know, where they can just, you know, choose the file and then upload it. They can put in an optional description if they like, and then, you know, click save. But what we didn't have before was after the application was submitted, there was no way for an applicant to upload a document again. And now there's a new link in the applicant portal called Documents. And if they click that, it looks just like that section on the application. But the benefit is that it's there all the time. So if somebody submitted their application, right now they can go back and they can look at a read-only version of their application, but they couldn't see any of the documents that were associated with it. Now when they log in to their portal, after submitting formal review, they can come here and at least look at what they've uploaded. They can delete it. This applicant can delete the documents they've uploaded from here because they haven't submitted for formal review. After they submit for formal review, those are locked. They can't modify them. If they say want to send an updated CV, they're going to have to call you or send email and have you delete that document and then have to log in here and re-upload something new, or email it to you and you could add it yourself. But So some of the options here go away as after the applicant submits for formal review. So here's one. I'll just I'll upload this, save it. And so that document's been uploaded. And you'll see some of these are text files and some are PDFs, but that's because it's running on my machine. I don't do the document conversion here. I trust myself enough to not upload a virus or something. Okay, so this is what the applicant sees when they log in. There's a new item for them.
Just question.
Yes?
In the upload, like you'd said, transcript was a place where they can upload multiple.
Yeah.
But this hasn't been submitted for formal review, so should they still have an option to upload more transcripts? Or
Yes,
will they
yeah,
still
I'll show you that. Let me just, okay, so this applicant, so I'll just pick a file. I'll add another one. I think I can add up to 5, but I'm just gonna upload 3.
So once they've done multiple, like they have to do them all at once though. If they went to 3 institutions and they have 2 out of their 3, they shouldn't upload those 2 while
Yeah,
they're waiting for the
that's a
third?
that's a good point. I actually have an enhancement in my list of things to do to add that back in. But that's very perceptive of you and annoying. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I do have in my list of things to do to make sure that add new appears here. Thank you.
Thank you. Quick question, so is this now the student's version of their checklist?
This is the student's version of their documents, and which I mean.
Still have a checklist? that
Yeah,
they can
there's
see
a place where they can still go.
if
It's
their
in the same place.
application fee was in,
Yes,
if
yeah.
the GRE's been received, that's still there.
Yeah, that's still here. That's down here. That's on the status tab. Down here at the bottom. You know, it's just, you know, this will be good for them. A lot of these things they already know, and I don't have everything turned on to show up here. But things like GRE scores, it's nice for them to log in and see, oh, they have my electronic copy of the GRE scores or TOEFL. I also uploaded this to the application manager, the CV for this applicant. The system knows where a document came from and it keeps track of that. If you upload it through the application manager, it knows versus the students applying it. Or if we upload it eventually through GEMS, it'll know who the user was, just in case. Just in case there's a mystery as to how a document became associated with an application. Okay, any other questions about the students? Yes?
Mike, is there a prompt if they try to submit for formal review and they haven't satisfied the upload?
There will be when we, one of the options that doesn't appear at the local level or at the application manager level, but does appear at the top level, is an option for us to make certain things required for international and for domestic, and we just haven't turned it on yet because we wanted to keep things a little bit looser until everyone gets used to this. But yeah, we will be able to do that eventually. It's just we were a little bit leery about doing it too soon. Because there were applicants who submitted prior to these changes going into effect for this cycle and things like that. But yes, those rules can be enforced. All right, yeah, again, I'll just cancel that. And okay, so I'm going to go back to the application manager, and I'm going to look at the application list. And for attachments, the easiest way to get to attachments for an application is to just enable that field in the settings. Does everybody know how to modify the columns that appear at the top? No? Okay, I'll show you that quickly. If you look at an applicant list, and you have 2 links at the bottom here. One's called Edit List View, and the other one is Settings. If you click Settings, what that allows you to do at the top of this is to change the filters that appear at the top of the applicant list screen. And it's useful, depending on where you are, sort of in your application process, to have different filters at the top. And this is, at some point you might only care if applications are printed or what the current status is. And other times, you know, the review status might make more sense, but you can modify that whenever you want. But as far as the columns that appear at the top of the applicant list screen, and I'll just open that in a new tab so you can sort of see this. So all of these columns that appear, I've elected for that content to appear by going to my settings page. And so I've turned on these columns, and let's say I wanted to see GRE, which isn't showing up now. I would check that. And I actually, prior to this demo starting, I removed some columns because the screen resolution is so low here. I didn't want the screen to be too crowded, so I removed a bunch of columns from here that were longer. But I'm going to turn on GRE now. And then you have some other options here that aren't incredibly useful, but now I have access to every program, so your list for these sections is likely to be a lot more compact than mine. But you can also choose to which programs. I mean, everybody who has access to the system has access to certain programs. So you can further refine that. If you have access to 6 programs, but you really only work with one, you can come here and uncheck everything but that one, just to simplify the look of the application list for yourself. Anyway, we're focused now on content, how to change the columns that appear. And I selected GRE, and I'm just going to save it. And then when I come back here, I have a GRE column now. So that's how you can change what's there. So what I got on the subject, because I wanted to explain that if you want attachments to appear in this list, so you want to see who has attachments and who doesn't, you would just go and turn the column on under settings. So it's here now, and I have my test applicant, and this test applicant has 8 documents associated with their application. And when I click that, I see some prompts for things that haven't been uploaded yet, and then I see what has been uploaded. And as we've noted, there should be a link under here for multiple documents to be able to add more for any one of these items that allows for multiple files. And I can view them, I can delete them. If I want, let's say I have a paper copy of something, if I want to add that, I could here. And again, I'm in the application manager. So I'll do it now. I'm just going to upload something here. I'll save it. Okay. Oh, maybe I didn't. Oh, you know, it's not saving. I'm sorry, I'm not selecting the right file. I didn't read the directions. I'm not supposed to be uploading that. Again, this isn't the real site, this is my local site, so I'm not getting a warning or anything, but there it is. Okay, so that's the document I just uploaded. Okay, do I have any questions about the management of documents in the application manager? Yes?
I'm just wondering if you think, I don't know. I'm just wondering if you think it's intuitive to go to the bottom of the page when you want to save, rather than having a save at each instance.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I mean, the save links could be added anywhere here. Some of our tab screens do that. Yeah, that's a good request. I mean, we could do that. Typically, all of the documents are processed, and if somebody's going through and marking multiple documents, in order to upload them sort of like as you're sitting on the page, it's a little more technically difficult and harder on the server because there are multiple calls as opposed to uploading 3 documents at once. And so we had a lot of that in mind. As a matter of fact, when I first wrote this, that's the way it worked. But I found that if there were 10 applicants going in uploading, say, 10 big files each, it choked the server, and we just didn't want to take a chance that performance would suffer. So we did it that way. But with that said, there is no reason why there couldn't be a save link right here, so that as you did it, let's say I chose a document, click save, it would just send the document, and then the page would refresh with the document uploaded. So if someone makes a note of that, I can add that to the list of things to do. It's a very long list, so I can't promise it's going to be, but that's a good idea. Yes?
Mike, so it's not unusual for us to find that someone has submitted transcripts, and we then discover that credits have been transferred, so we have to ask them for an additional transcript. How is the system set up so that we could ask them, once they've submitted for their official GradMet application, can they go back in and upload an additional documentation, additional transcript at that point?
Okay, well, technically, yes, they can. I think that there's another option there on that page that, on the setup page for local checklist items that isn't being shown, that would allow you to do that. Right now, if they went in, they'd see the prompt. And this actually came up during the week where we had somebody who submitted their application but didn't attach, one or two items, and when they logged back in, they couldn't resubmit because they went to the documents page in their portal, but they couldn't save anything, they couldn't add. So we'll be addressing that this week, but the idea was, yes, to allow, because that's sort of in line with somebody uploading something that wasn't what you expected, or in this case, they need to add something to an item. So yes, they'll be able to do that. Okay.
And fairly soon, it sounds like.
Oh, this week, yeah. But like I said, we're still finalizing a lot of the logic, but that's part of it. You know, when can somebody resubmit something or add something to an application, as long as it's been authorized, and that's some of the question now. How do we authorize it? Do we give you a flag where you can go and say, yes, it's okay for them to upload this document, but not these three? You know, that you need some control. You don't want them changing something that's already been submitted,
right,
but you want to be able to enable them to go in and add something or re-upload something that's not acceptable. Maybe something's not readable, or they didn't scan the right part of the document or something. But there has to be a way for them to go back in. Okay, yes?
Under question, I think this is cool where you have a specific button for a specific thing. But I remember last year there was like this one attachment thing where the student could just put anything in there and it didn't have a label. Is that going to still be in the system? And if it is there a way that we can remove it or disable it? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, one of the reasons that we did all this was because we had 5 slots of sort of documents that really could have been anything, and there was no labels associated with them other than what the student happened to type in, and it was up to the departmental staff or whoever was reviewing the application to figure out what was there and what wasn't. So that is gone now. That's a good point. So the question then is, well, if somebody uploaded documents or attached documents to an application prior to this change going into effect, how do you categorize those? Well, right now you don't. There's no way to do it, but they don't disappear. What happens is it builds this screen. And again, this screen looks ridiculously huge because of the screen resolution and also the fact that I have way more items turned on than most of you will ever enable, because this is my demo machine. But if you look at the bottom, there's one called Other Documents, and I put that here on purpose because if somebody uploaded 5 documents prior to this change going into effect, they still appear on the screen, they still appear to the applicant, but they're not categorized. They're just at the bottom under Other Documents. So one of the enhancements that I have in my to-do list is to give you an easy way for you to say, okay, well, I see that there are these other not categorized documents here. And the student has typed in labels like, this is my resume or my CV, this is my personal statement. So you should just be able to say, okay, well, this item that's not categorized belongs in this category, and then just change, maybe there's a drop-down list or something next to them where you just choose from your checklist what item that should be associated with, and then it'll move under that category. It's technically not difficult to do. I haven't gotten around to making that change yet. But that probably would solve the problem. And I think that if it were last semester or something, and there were upload documents, and there were a lot, you wouldn't necessarily care about those. It's just going forward to sort of keep everybody moving along with the new model, and to be able to facilitate the transfer of documents to international admissions when we get to that in a month or so. Okay?
For purposes of time, I'd like to
Have everybody hold their questions until we get closer towards the end and kind of keep track of what you're doing because we do have quite a bit to cover and I want to make sure we have enough time to address it. Yes. Okay. Oh, time flies. I love being the center of attention, by the way. I noticed. I'm going to, all right, yeah, we are running low on time, so I think I'll look at if we're going good with the document uploads, and really the document uploading and checklist was the main focus of this. So I'm glad we managed to get through that with plenty of time. And I don't think a lot of what's left here is going to require a lot of time. So I'm just going to let's take a look at the editing HTML content. And a lot of you may not have seen this screen because either you've set it up years ago and there's no reason for you to go back and modify it. But one of the nice enhancements we made was to add some of these sort of what you see is what you got HTML controls for application and portal content that's specific to your group, to your program. So you can see that you can make things bold. And just as a quick example, I'm going to write. Okay, so this is the message at the top of the application, and I could make that bold just by clicking here. And prior to this, you had to go in and put the HTML markup in like curly brackets or something. But now you can add formatting here. You could add an image if you wanted, which I'm not going to do. But you could add bulleted items. I mean, there are a lot of options here, and you could mark things like I could say that's going to be heading 1. For this whole line, but I'm not going to do that. So this is the message at the top of the application, and maybe the only thing I'm going to do is make this orange, so it stands out for the applicant. And I'm going to save this now, and I think all of these tell you where it will appear and on the application or in the portal. But here, it's obviously at the top of the application, so it's easy enough for me to just make that change. I'm going to save it, and then I'm just going to go preview the application to see how that looks. So there you have it. And the idea was just to give you a better idea of how it was going to look without having to run, put in your markup and then run the preview and jump back and forth. It's not perfect because every browser renders HTML a little bit differently. In most cases, it's going to be perfect. But if you have a lot of embedded CSS. Let's say you did something in Word and then just pasted it in. You may want to just make sure you preview it to verify it looks the way you expect it's going to. If it doesn't, there's probably just like a line spacing issue or small issues like that. But for the most part, it'll be exactly how it appears here on this page. Do I have any questions about the HTML markup? Again, most of you set this up years ago, and you don't need to change it. It looks fine. Okay, so let's go to the. I'm gonna jump down to application status form updates now, and we sent out an announcement about these enhancements, but I'll just go through and I'll jump through the different sections, and if there are any questions, you can let me know. But it used to be that you would have to go in and you would have to choose the semesters for which you were accepting applications. And it was turned on when you went in and you made the decision to select fall 12 or something. There was no way for you to say when an application period started or ended. In other words, when an applicant was able to go in and submit an application, first of all, find your application in the list and then submit it. It was all based on when somebody went into this status page and deselected a semester or selected it, which isn't very helpful. So I think back in June, June or July, this change was added where you could choose what semesters you wanted to make available here in this column, and then additionally choose sort of when they turned on or turned off, just by choosing this calendar here. And
that was a nice enhancement because you could sort of set it and forget it. You knew when the applications were going to become available and you knew when the deadline was. And we could also, the second nice thing about that is it allowed us to tell, you know, which applicants had started applications but hadn't submitted before the deadline. So at the top level, we have a way where we can send reminders to people, to applicants who are getting close to that period, to the day where they won't be able to submit for formal review even though they started an application. And that's actually how this enhancement came to be. Somebody said, well, somebody started an application and submitted, you know, 5 days after they took their application offline. Well, that just meant that nobody could start a new one, but people had already started one and were able to submit. But this solves that problem. So are there any questions about, okay, so I'll just mention this option at the bottom. This bottom option sort of turns on everything. If you uncheck this, it'll automatically enable the features up at top, and I think it says it here. It explains what that option does. Ignore that. That was always there. Now, application visibility is sort of, it dovetails with what I just mentioned, because when the application wasn't available, let's say it fell out of the calendar range here, the option, or the semester wasn't turned on, and applicants went to, let me see if I can just go to, okay, and applicants just went here. All of the available programs would appear in this list, but certain programs wouldn't appear. And it just made it look like the program didn't exist at the school. So what we did was we added this option to always show it in the list of available degree programs, but when they clicked it, you were able to put in a note here. This note might say, you know, thank you for your interest. We are accepting applications from, you know, this day to this day. It's a friendlier message than just saying that the program doesn't exist, which is the message they were getting before this enhancement was made. So that's the application visibility section here. That's what that's all about. And again, if you mouse over these little help buttons, these little help icons, it explains. Okay, I think communication is essentially the same. One thing I will mention is if you remember the document upload section on the application where there was a mailing address given, if you want official unofficial documents that an applicant can, for some reason, can't digitize or convert to in digital format, and they're going to be sending them to you, and you would rather have them sent to you than to GEMS, then you could put your departmental mailing address in here. So if I just say, you know, that's my address, and I save this, and I'm just going to look at the preview. So now you can see that instead of the GEMS address appearing, it's this nonsense that I just typed in appearing. Okay, and I think that's pretty much all that's new for the status. I just wanted to run through that because, like I said, that was a pretty recent enhancement.
But Mike?
Yes?
So you have summer 12 checked off.
Yes.
They can't submit after December 22nd, but if you don't uncheck the make available box, summer 12 will still appear as an option on the application? Moving forward, regardless of that date? You see what I mean? So even though the date is passed to submit an application, we as departments have to go in there and uncheck make available so that it's not even an option for somebody to start? Right.
Well, if the current date is not within the date ranges, now it depends. If the applicant's already started the application and you uncheck a different semester, they won't see that option. It depends on what the current date is. But if this option were unchecked, it doesn't really matter what the date ranges would be. That option will never appear as a semester they can choose. But if it is selected, then it goes by the current date. I'm not sure I'm answering your question. So give me a scenario.
So let's say it's December 23rd and I walk into my office and I want to make sure that nobody picks that semester as an option to start an application. Regardless of the date, like the date won't turn it off for me automatically.
Yes, it does. Yeah, it would make it unavailable. I mean, okay, so more realistic, and forget about what the labels are here, but a more realistic scenario is probably like this. If these two were turned on, and somebody was out of range for summer 12, but they started their application already, they're still gonna see the summer 12
Right.
in there. If they tried to submit after the date, they get a message saying, you know, you're past, you know, the date's passed, and they can't submit. The only option they have then is to pick fall 12. Well, in this case, again, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but they would have to pick whatever was available because they wouldn't be able to submit, they would have missed the deadline based on the dates that you entered. Okay, does that make sense? Probably not. It's all carefully planned. And, no, I think I know what you're saying, but so it's like checking the box tells the system to look at the dates. If that makes sense. If the box isn't, if this box, the first column, make available, isn't checked, it doesn't even care what the dates are entered. It's never going to even consider that term.
If you want to supersede it, if let's say all of a sudden you get this exceptional person on the 24th and they've never started an application, can you supersede it and turn it on and accept the application?
Well, you have a couple options there. One would be you would have to change the date for everybody. You couldn't just say for one applicant. Now, the thing is, once an applicant starts an application and they pass the deadline, they can't submit it unless you change the dates here. It's, I mean, and so what I would do then is I would just make the date, push the date out a week and let them submit. You could uncheck the box. Nobody else would be able to choose that semester, but that applicant would be able to submit because they're still within the date range. So in other words, you'd be hiding it from everybody, and you know that there was only that one applicant sitting out there, you're waiting for them to submit. So there's always a way around it, and that's the reason, that's a really good illustration why there's a checkbox and a date range, to allow you to do that. Okay, yes?
So we do have to check the box to turn applications on though.
Yes.
We just don't have, if we set our date correctly, we don't have to come in and turn it off.
That's right. It's like the automation. It'll automatically become available or unavailable based on the date range you set. Okay. Yeah. I think we're good here on this page. Any other questions about the status page before I? All right. I think I'm going to skip the application processing fee, maybe even ask Chris to talk about that at the end. But I want to move to activating letters of recommendation because I'm not sure how much time that's going to take. It probably depends on the questions. But now, can I just see a show of hands for everybody who's accepting electronic letters of recommendation? Okay, a lot aren't. Okay, that's good. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to walk through the steps that you would take to enable online letters of recommendation. And we'll start with this. I think that even if, is there anybody who just doesn't care about letters of recommendation? Meaning you don't care if they're sent on paper or electronically? Probably nobody, right? Okay, good. So I'll start with that premise in mind. I assume everybody has questions for letters of recommendation on their application, meaning the recommender's name, their email address, their title, and all that. So I think just in the interest of saving time, I don't need to go in and show you how to choose those questions for the application because you've probably already done that. Anybody would like me to show that?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I assumed too much. Okay, so if I go to application content, under the setup menu, application content, and I'm going to stick with the same program here, and I'm just going to go down to, there's a section for this. Let's see. Okay, it's called recommendations, and I'm going to click that. And I can choose what I want to ask the applicant. So there's their first reference name, title, and over here to the right, it shows you how it's going to appear on the application, the name, title, and again, there's going to be a section called recommendations on the application. In this case, I'm picking the title, organization, And one thing that's important for electronic is obviously the email address, because the recommender gets an automated email sent, and you actually write the content of that, and I'll show you where that's done. The invitation for them to log in and upload a document. So, I mean, at the very least, what's required is a name and an email address for a recommender, but everything else, you know, may or may not be important to you. But this is where you choose all that. And for this application, I only have 3 selected. 3, you can have up to 5. So here we have 3 selected, and I'm going to move now to, and you know where they appear on the application. So I'm going to look at the letters of recommendation setup, and that's under a setup menu. It's called Recom Setup, and you get a list here. Again, I have access to a lot of programs. You're probably only going to see yours in this list, and I'm going to choose, okay, this one. Okay. So after you've selected the questions for your application, you have to go to this under setup, and you have to make sure this box is checked. If you don't check that box, the system is not going to even look to see if you know, a recommender was submitted on the application, and if you have an email address to send an invitation. So first step is to make sure you have the questions on your application, make sure you have at least the name and email address, and then the second step is to, under the setup menu, to come to this recommend, I don't know, I'm probably going to just spell that out because it looks like it would fit. I'll have to make that change. But you come to this recommender setup, and you can see right here in this list whether or not the letter recommendations are enabled. For this one, they are, because this box is checked. And then there are 4 fields here where you can enter content. Now, if you choose to leave any of these blank, there's sort of default content that's sent that's already been entered at a higher level grab it. But I would just take the time, and you probably already have this letter sitting around somewhere, and just paste that in. And so you have the different fields here. This is what the referee would receive, the recommender. This is their automated invitation. And an applicant also gets a notification that again, you can read this text here. After a letter's been submitted, it's a notification to the applicant, even though they could log into their portal and see it too. We give you the option to send it. And then we have what's called a welcome site message, and I'll show you where this appears in 1 second. This is, yeah, hopefully I didn't close that window, but, so this is content that, so I'm a recommender, I got my invitation, I click the link, and I put in my PIN, and I log in, and the first thing I see is whatever you typed here. I'm in the recommenders portal. And then you can add some additional instructions for what you expect to be in the letter recommendation. And of course, and then there's also a post-submission message that you can put in. Again, this is a lot of these are optional. If you don't put anything in, something that makes sense will appear. That's sort of generic for the entire campus. But so that's where any questions about setting up letter recommendation? First step, pick the question. Second step, just go to this page and make sure everything looks good to you, and make sure the box is checked.
If you scroll down, you have some code in there as well. Is that necessary?
No, it isn't. This is just, yeah, the HTML here. Yeah. No, it's not necessary. You can just put text in, it'll look fine.
So the reference writers see a text box that they can enter text in?
They actually have 2 options, and I should probably just log in. So I'm going to just do that because it'll probably. So where would that go?
Can we make it so they can't type in a text box, that they have to attach an official document?
Yeah, that was my question. We would prefer that they don't have the option of having a text box.
No, I think that's a good idea, and I'm just going to log in here. 2, 3, 4. That's you. Yes. Okay. So I just logged in. Now, this was when we did make the enhancement, and this is again, I wasn't too involved with GrabMet back when this was done, but I do recall that when we allowed them to attach files, we thought it would be smarter. Now, originally they could only paste text in, which is sort of silly because You take content out of a Word document and try to paste it in, you get all the crazy codes and things like that. I think going forward though, if everyone's in agreement that we would just want to mandate that a file has to be uploaded, I think that makes it easier for everybody. And because what I have to do now is if somebody did paste text in here, behind the scenes I have to export that to a text file and convert it to a PDF anyway. Not that I do it manually, but the system would have to do that. I think, so going forward, I'll keep that in mind for the revision of this whole module. Okay, so let's point out a couple things here. The instructions that appear at the top are whatever we entered back here.
Mike, there's a question over here.
Oh, there is, I'm sorry.
What happens if somebody's already submitted by typing it in? That's my only question.
If they've already submitted by typing it in,
Is this gonna wipe it out if you just do an attachment?
well, for an individual who went in here and submitted text, and they can't go back in and submit something else.
No, but what I'm saying is when you go forward from now and say just attach file, if somebody's already typed in a letter of recommendation, is that gonna go away?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, that can still be converted to a PDF because the text is sitting in the database. It can be exported and then converted to a PDF. But,
Thank you.
oh, no problem. And just to clarify something, we've allowed attachments to be uploaded for letters of recommendation for years. That was the first place we ever even did file uploads in the system. So if somebody elects to attach a file, and a lot of them do, and they click here, they get a prompt that just appears. But we wanted to give people the option. I think in this day and age, it probably is silly for us to give them a text box to type in a letter of recommendation or to paste one in. So I think attached file is the way to go forward. And like I said, if everyone's in agreement, then the type in option will go away. Okay, any questions about what the recommender sees?
This isn't really about what the recommender sees, but I'm wondering if I can throw one in the suggestion box. Right now, I've got to print out the letters of recommendation for the committee. And it's kind of a pain to have to, you're in the application, I can print the GREs, I can print, the application, but I have to go back out to the list. Is there any way that we can attach those letters of recommendation so that it's right there in the actual application? Or like right up on top of where the letters of recommendation, do you understand what I'm?
Yeah, I mean, going forward, and hopefully we'll have time to talk a little bit about this, what we're going to do, one of the future enhancements is sort of a reviewers portal, where we're going to look at where, I mean, right now, I even think where attachments are viewable is not very intuitive, and they're all, so you have to go look at letters of recommendation separate from the application, separate from these supplementary materials. We're going to bring all of that together with our reviewers portal